What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another highly combustible reaction. We're gonna be jumping into the next one on our Rijksmuseum journey, the next one on our Netherlands journey. The Rijksmuseum unlocked the Bewitched Museum. Hey, we got Halloween coming up. It's right around the corner, so let's jump into it. Let's check this one out. It's coming at us via donation from Mikhail. Much love, always keeping us on that history grind, and we do appreciate it. Let's roll.
And fantasy, of course, is all about invention, and invention is the realm of the artist.
It's an amazing library. It's like the Harry Potter library.
It's that time of year again, Halloween. So today I would like to talk to you about the witch, one of the most overly romanticized fantasy figures in Western culture, whose historical roots, however, reflect a deeply traumatic episode in the history of women's lives. This period, roughly from the late 15th century to the 17th century, also produced some very important and beautiful works of art that have played a key role in how we visualize witches today. This iconic print from around 1500 by the German superstar of the Renaissance, Albrecht Dürer, basically established the pictorial tradition of witches in Western art. We see an old woman with sagging breasts who is flying backwards on
the typical witch that you would see. Like, that's very cool that, like, we're getting to see kind of the origins of how we picture witches as the old hag, with a wart on her nose. Like,
we see an old woman with sagging breasts who is flying backwards on a goat. In between her legs, she's holding a distaff, dangerously close to her genitalia. On the left, in the corner, we see a puto, one of those chubby cherubs, who is standing on its head. This is a reference to the fact that they thought that witchcraft was an inversion of the normal ethical and religious codes. And this is why we see the witch flying backward on the goat, and this is why we see her long wavy hair blowing in one direction, whereas the long wavy hair, the thick fur of the goat is blowing in the other direction. And this is also why, as a joke, Albrecht Dürer himself inversed the D in his own monogram. It's the world upside down.
wow, that's interesting.
10 years later, Dürer's student Hans Baldung Green created this spectacular woodcut in which he reused Dürer's motif of the witch flying backward on the goat. He went further though, because he decided to depict the witch's Sabbath, which was then thought to be a gathering, a nightly gathering of witches, during which they were thought to fly on animals or on broomsticks, during which they were thought to copulate with the devil. In fact, the goat is an age-old symbol of lust and also the embodiment of the devil, and in which they were thought to concoct ways to harm men. Here you see sausages. This is a very clear reference to the male genitalia and therefore to castration, which was a real fear at the time. Now, up until this image, descriptions of the Sabbath only existed in books, in written sources. Most notably, the book called The Witch's Hammer from 1487, which was essentially a handbook on witchcraft for prosecutors and judges. So,
honestly, that would be an interesting read. That would be something that I would be interested in actually, like, looking at.
So, for that, Hans Baldung Green had no other image but the text, so he could use his fantasy. And of course, fantasy is invention, and invention is the realm of the artist. Now, as an art historian, I find this image mesmerizingly beautiful. I also find it rich with invention, with skill. Because here we have these witches who are beautifully organized in the composition, and they're sitting amidst bones and skulls and the sausages, and they're flying, and there's so much going on, but it's also compact and it's balanced. At the same time, there's this force with which the steam coming out of this pot here in the foreground is blowing out all these horrible things, the debris and the frogs and just nasty stuff. I find this just so incredibly beautiful to look at. But as a woman, as a person, I find this image deeply troubling, because I know that the descriptions of the Sabbath in these books were based on so-called confessions of real-life women who were tortured severely and then drowned or burned. And I also know that this particular image played a huge role in the popularization of this terrible nightmare. After all, you can't unsee an image. Images are powerful.
And there you have it. You see, it's okay to kind of have two stances when it comes to art, when it comes to anything that might be offensive to you in one way. You can see it as beautiful in a different way. Like, that's very cool to me. That's a very professional way to look at things. It might be kind of dark and troubling on one side, but as an art piece, like, it is very well done. It is done beautifully, and it was done in a time far before us. Like, it's very, very cool. It's just rich with history. I don't think we got to throw history away because a little bit of it offends us, or because we disagree with some things that happened during history. You're not going to change it. It happened. It is what it is. It's okay to have multiple stances on it and say, hey, you know what? From a professional standpoint, I think of it as this. From a personal standpoint, I might dislike it. I might not like it at all. But hey, there's something to be said for art in all of its forms.
And now we're going to leave this beautiful library and go to the galleries to look at a painting that was obviously influenced by this print. And for that, we're going to wear a face mask. This painting from 1526 by the Amsterdam artist Jacob Cornelis van Ossane depicts an Old Testament story called Saul and the Witch of Endor. Now, in this story, the Witch of Endor has a small role, and she is more of a psychic or a medium. That story in this painting is relegated to the background. What the artist was really interested in is depicting a Sabbath, so a contemporary witchcraft scene, the way he knew from prints like we have just seen. So on the left here we have the Witch of Endor. She is the old hag type with the hanging breast. We know her from Dürer. She's sitting in a magic circle, surrounded by owls and holding and lighting candles made of human fat. In the meantime, she's looking in a spell book with gibberish symbols. On the right here, we have other witches who are performing the Sabbath. So we now know what that looks like. We have one who is flying on a skull. We have one who is sitting on a goat. And here, this lady in blue here is barbecuing a sausage, which we now know is a reference to the male genitalia and therefore to castration. In the 17th century, in the Dutch Republic, witch hunts had almost ceased to exist. But the interest in magic was still very much present, as it is today. In this virtuoso engraving by the Haarlem artist Jan van der Velde from 1626, here in 2 impressions, the witch is a young, full-breasted lady with a slight smile on her face. And the demons in the fire are less threatening and more comical than in the German prints. The nightmarish reality of witch hunts than witchcraft had become pure fantasy.
It's amazing to see how stories evolve over the years. We've gone from something that really was a real thing in a lot of places where they were kind of doing the whole witch trials and burning people and drowning people, and it really, the way she said it really did become more fantasy. Now when we think of witches, we don't think about the actual acts that happened back in the day. We don't think about the actual things. We think about that fantasy, magical, witch, Halloween, that kind of thing. That's kind of sad, actually.
Had become pure fantasy. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the Witches of the Rijksmuseum. Happy Halloween, everyone.
Very, very cool. 100% something I want to look more into. I've always found the whole stories of witches and things fascinating. Here you go. Go subscribe to the Rijksmuseum. Make sure you go show them some love. We're subbed up do the same, because we are getting a lot of information out of the Rijksmuseum. I can't wait to come up and take a visit. Once again, shout out to Mikhail for this one. If you guys enjoyed it, hit the like button. If you dislike it, hit the dislike button. Check out one of the videos up there. Subscribe right here if you want to see more content, possibly your content. Till the next one, I'm highly combustible. You guys be happy, healthy, safe. I love you to the moon and back. Peace.